What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. So the teams have finally been announced for this Argentina versus Australia game. Been an awful long time coming. Argentina announced their sort of mid-afternoon. Now we've waited for about 6 hours later for Australia to finally get theirs. The joy of time zones, I'm going to guess, as to why we finally got round to it. But they are now released. We've already done the preview video for the Springboks versus All Blacks game. Make sure to go check that one out after this one. So let's start off with Argentina. Go on, they announced their team like 6 hours ago. It's probably worth me starting off with them. So Argentina in the July internationals had a really nice run, getting 2 wins over a Scotland team that for all purposes I feel like could have won that series and just let it slip away from them. Argentina playing back at home finally. They weren't going to let it get the best of them. They just fought back like anything in that third game and managed to clinch a test series win. Going into this one, going up against Australia, probably going up against a team that's going to make a lot fewer mistakes than we got to see from that Scotland team. However, Argentina have very much impressed me from that July series. There was far more aggressive attack. Every single player just throwing everything at it. So I'm really looking forward to see what they can offer this test series. So starting off then, in the front row, we have Tetas, Chaparro, Julian Montoya, and Gomez Cordella. Now, these are 3 people we saw an awful lot playing up against Scotland. And to be fair, even though sometimes the scrummaging looked a bit even in teams, the line-out situation was going very well for Argentina, and one of the reasons is players like Julian Montoya actually being able to throw the ball where they need to. Scotland fans were getting very annoyed at that, but the scrummaging looked pretty solid. They weren't really getting run over a lot of scrums. They were managing to hold out themselves, though Australia are obviously going to be back in their scrum as well, so hopefully these lads can hold out. In the lock departments then, Matthias Alemano and Thomas Lavanini. Now, like I said, the line-out situation for them against Scotland very good, but Scotland weren't very good. I'm just being blunt. So it's quite hard to judge where Argentina were up to, but on their own throw-ins, we absolutely got to see Argentina securing an awful lot of line-out possession, so very good for them. Hopefully they can keep that going on into this tournament. On to the back row then, and in the 6th shirt we have Juan Martin Gonzalez Samso, one with a fantastic name every single time I read that name, just immense name. Marcos Kramer in the 7th shirt, and then Pablo Matera moving into that 8th shirt. All 3 of these lads as well playing extremely aggressive against that Scotland team, carrying the ball in hand, just running hard lines of the forwards. Defensively as well, Argentina looked pretty sound. These sets of forwards were really giving it their all. It was just the unrelenting from pressure that got to see Scotland actually getting over for tries. But defensively, I thought they were looking really, really good. If they can just hold on to the ball a bit more, I don't see why this team couldn't do very well against Australia. In the halfback partnership then, Thomas Cubelli and Santiago Carreras. Obviously, Sanchez still out with that injury that he did pick up in that first game against Scotland. Carreras playing absolutely awesome. To be fair, they didn't really feel like they missed Sanchez a whole bunch. Nice to see him stepping up into that fly half shirt. He'll be trying to continue that on. Fantastic running play, actually. Really nice to see from him picking some beautiful lines from a fly half, along with people like Cubelli on the outside of him for offloading. The running game from the backs against that Scotland team looked brilliant for the whole 3 games, actually. So I'm really hoping we get to see that carry on over to this. In the centre partnership, Dara Fuente and Orlando. Again, 2 of these lads that were just smashing through lines. They just were giving it everything. We saw so often we had these centres partnered up with wingers going on like a 3-player strike run out on the far wing, catching Scotland off guard, finding these gaps. And Orlando was one of these lads, absolutely leading from the front there. I think this is a nice centre partnership. And then in the back 3, Boffelli going to remain in there. Santiago Cordero and Juan Cruz Maria. Now, Boffelli, of course, had this sort of name in lights at the end of the Scotland tour, managing to get that try in the final game in the dying minutes to actually see them winning that game, as long as getting the kicks as well. The kicking was sort of 50-50 depending on the game. He was either kicking them all or missing a good chunk of them. So hopefully he's been able to just sort of settle that down a little bit, get that consistency up. I'd like to potentially see what Carreras has got in terms of his kicking potential as well. But overall, as a backline, this is sort of the same team we were seeing against that Scotland team, and they look great. in that tour. I think this is a good Argentina team. I think this has got quite a lot of potential. In terms of the replacements then, Augustin Creevy is going to come on in that second half at some point. Big boy to come on again. Line-out situation was looking really good for them when Creevy was on. I don't think there's going to be a misstep for them at all there. Vives and Sclavi are going to come on to bolster him in that front row as well. We have Santiago Godrona and Rodrigo Bruni going in as well. Replacement backs, we've got Bazan Velez, whose name I do not even remember seeing in the Scotland tour. Maybe he could have been in there before. A bit of a new name to me. We also have Thomas Alboros, another name I don't know. And then finally, it's Matthias Moroni, who again, another one of these backs that was just finding room in that Scotland defence. So overall, I think this is a solid looking starting 15. There's a couple of names I'm not entirely sure about on this bench for Argentina, so I'll be keeping a bit of a special eye out for them. But overall, I think this is an Argentina team that's got something they can actually prove against this Australia team. Talking of which, we'll move on to have a little bit of chat about the Wallabies, who finally announced their team. We've been waiting all day for this. It's taken a long time to get around to it. Now, the Wallabies lost their test series against England in the summer. The final game was looking a little bit closer than I was expecting it to be. Just a couple of times, Australia finding themselves under pressure and just having to go for these relieving kicks, just inviting England to go on the attack. I think Argentina actually played quite in a similar way in terms of how fast their attack comes. So I think one of the last things we'll want to see from this Australia team is going to be a lot of this kicking the ball back. I think they'll be wanting just to hold on to it a little bit more in this series and just let your own players run. We saw Australia doing the same thing. If you have the ball in hand, we saw how well a couple of their wingers were doing, a couple of their centres were doing. It just needs to just hold on to the ball. You will get over for those tries. Now, I believe Australia have had a bit of a plague in terms of injuries. A couple of big names missing here. So we'll have a quick run through of the team that has been announced for this game. Starting off in this front row, James Slipper Fowlo Faingar and Alan Alalatoa. That is a big front row. Clearly, the scrum area is going to be a big one for this one. They're going to want to try and take over that. I actually thought Scotland scrum quite well against Argentina. I'm trying to think back. I feel like the Australian scrum was slipping up more than having the opportunity to get in charge of the England scrum. So a bit hard to gauge where both Argentina and Australia are at. Hopefully, being in the Argentinian sort of stadium for this one, we will actually be able to see these lads go head to head. I'm just hoping we get some complete scrums in this one, as opposed to watching people slip up. In the lock department, Darcy Swain and Matt Phillip. Of course, these lads had a tough old time in terms of the line-out situation, but I have to say, I thought I was actually quite impressed. I really expected England to steal quite a few more lineouts from this Australian team. They look pretty good. Not a great deal of caps in their lock departments across the board, really. So just holding on, just managing to get there again. Argentina lineout looking good. Let's see if they can disrupt anything. On to the back row then, our first debutant of the series, I think, actually. I don't think we had any from any of the games either. We have Jed Holloway coming in the 6 shirt, Michael Hooper in that 7 shirt. Where else are you going to be? And then Rob Valentini. It doesn't actually say on this graphic who the captain is, but I'm going to have a stab in the dark and say it's probably Michael Hooper. Of course, in terms of the breakdown situation, we know what Michael Hooper offers. Rob Valentini going to be bringing a big ball carrying game. It's going to be interesting to see how these teams get on, because Argentina played with such ferocity against Scotland. I'm not even sure how it's going to operate to have these big ball carriers, but we did see where the Argentinian defence began to fall apart was just consistent pressure and having these big carries. So people like Valentini and Michael Hooper, I think, are a good call in here. In terms of the halfback partnership, Nick White and Quade Cooper, yeah, we were seeing this in the England tour. Both of them working pretty well. We were definitely finding a couple of positions. It's just getting that kicking where you want it to be, using these positional kicks to actually move yourself up the field and not just reactionary to being under the pressure from your attack. I just want to hopefully see them settle that kicking game down and not just kicking it for the sake of it, but actually having purpose, having desire behind it. That would be a real bonus from me. In terms of the centre partnership, Hunter Paisami and Len Ikitau is going to fulfill their centre partnership now. There isn't going to be any Karevi. For anyone who didn't know, he went out in the Commonwealth Games, picked up an injury, so he's going to be missing, I believe, this entire tournament, which is a big blow for them. There was a couple of big situations playing that England team where his boot was coming to safety right on their own try line, so not having him, losing an option there in terms of that inside centre. But Hunter Paisami, also a very good player, but for me, seeing far more as just a running player. I think he's also got quite a good boot on him, but I'm just not sure in terms of like game-making decisions whether he's going to have quite the same level of kicking as we saw from Karevi, but I'll try and keep an eye on that when the games come around. And then finally in the back three, Corey Obetti, Jordan Pataya, and Tom Wright, who I thought actually played really well in the final game. Tom Wright looking really good. Yeah, I think just getting these guys in, just get them involved, you know. Teams like Argentina and Australia both like using their forwards, but one thing I really enjoyed seeing in that England series was that Australia were beginning to play expansive and they were scoring tries. We saw people like Tom Wright and Andrew Kellaway and these lads, once you give them the room on the outside, they've definitely got these world-class finishers there, just spreading the ball wide. I think it might even help them. I mean, if they actually play in a similar way to how Scotland did against Argentina, go for the full-out offensive attack, use these backs to just keep the attack on the offensive, get the quick ball recycling. I think there's potential here for Australia to do pretty well. And then in terms of the replacements, then we have Lonergan, Matt Gibbon going to be making his debut at some point, and then finally Taniela Tupou, who a lot of people seemed a little bit down on. Taniela Tupou was scrummaging, certainly looked like he needed a bit of work, but his running game is just so much there. It's hard to keep him out of the team. He's a hard man to stop, especially when you're on that 5 metre. We saw him getting over for the tries. 5 metres out, crash ball. That's a big man to stop. So I think second half when people are getting tired, that's a good time to put him on. The rest of the replacement forwards, we have Nick Frost, Rob Leota and Pete Samu going for the 6-2 split. I really don't think that's a bad move at all. Getting these big lads on later, it's going to be a rough old game, this one. I'm expecting big collisions, big tackles. Wouldn't be surprised if this is the sort of game where you could see a couple of cards being handed out. There's already talk about this 20-minute red card thing going on. This could be the sort of game with just the amount of ferocious tackles that are going to come in this game. Big forwards coming on in that second half. Going to be a good move for them. And then finally the replacement backs, Jake Gordon and Reece Hodge, just to add that last minute. If you're not going to win that game right at the end, bring on someone like Reece Hodge, the big cannon boot that's going to put it down. And to be fair, the back row they actually have in Australia, there's an awful lot of interchangeability between players. But going for two debutants, could that be a big call going into this? Now, they are missing a couple of people, like I already said. We are missing people like Karevi. They're also missing people like Parecki, who I believe picked up an injury as well recently. So a couple of names missing there. Putting on two debutants, a couple of low-cap locks. Oh, it's going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be a fun game to see how this one goes. In terms of a score prediction then, they're two big teams. I really feel if Argentina can keep on the momentum that they built from that Scotland team and just not allow Australia to have a lot of time on the ball, actually keep the ball in hand, narrow down some of their mistakes. That was one of the key things that was letting Scotland off, was Argentinian mistakes, knocking the ball on or giving away easy penalties that allowed Scotland to clear. If they can cut down on that sort of stuff, I really think Argentina could actually win this. I still think it's a good Australian team. I'm just not entirely sure about some of the switches we've seen from that England setup. So I'm going to say Argentina to win. Not by a lot. I imagine it could even be quite similar to what we saw in that final Argentina-Scotland game. I'm going to say Argentina to win by 2. That's what I'm going to go for. But of course, guys, what do I know about rugby? I know absolutely nothing, as I've heard from the comment section many a time. So make sure you guys drop down in the comments your thoughts on the game, your thoughts on the teams, what you think the final score will be, your score predictions, all that good stuff. I really enjoy having a read through of the comments. And if you haven't already, we're on very limited time now. 2 days to sort out your Super Brew. The Super Brew is live. We have both the predictor for some quick picking which team we think is going to win action, but then also the fantasy league. So now that the teams are finally out, I can actually begin to build my fantasy team. Make sure you are signed up. Get that done before Saturday/Sunday if you're in Australia, because I think for you guys they're playing this game at like 4 in the morning or something over there because of time zones and stuff. But yeah, absolutely sign up to those. It's completely free, easy to do, video on the channel. Go check it out. And if you've enjoyed this one today, guys, remember to leave this video a like. And if you've enjoyed any of this content today, remember to subscribe to the channel. We're nearing those 2,000 subscriber marker. Really hoping we can get there throughout the Rugby Championship. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. I hope you've all enjoyed. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.